Welcome to Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. We'll be right back in just a moment. Yeah, I miss those guys.
And that's a very special CD, isn't it?
Yeah, that's So Soon the Truth from their Past Present EP.
Let's just keep it in.
They're from Houston. Yeah, we can play more from it throughout. They're from Houston, Texas.
CD I brought in.
And one of the things I'll say about that is that's kind of a Freethinker Radio exclusive these days, because if you go check out So Soon the Truth, which I recommend you do, they put out a more recent album in 2017, So that song that you just heard, you can't find it anywhere online unless you actually have a physical copy of they've apparently taken it down. So
there's a reason to buy them physicals, even if it's a relatively new band and you're like, I can get it any time. They might just take that away. They might just take it away.
Yeah, so please keep supporting local music, local artists, local activists, local radio, KPFT, 90.1 KPFT, commercial-free, corporate-free, listener-supported radio, where you can always support us. If you want to support the station, that helps us out. Go to kpft.org. Lots of ways to contribute, to donate, and really to invest in this this outlet. And really, if you support our work, that's a great way to do that. We do want to remind you guys that you're catching us at the beginning of the week on a Monday. And if you want to tune in again on Friday to see what we've been through between the next then and now and what we have, new insights or things like that, tune in to Freethinker Radio on the FM side. That's 90.1 FM here in Houston, or online at kpft.org/listen to hear our 1 hour FM show from Fridays at 3 to 4. So
yeah,
you get, and I will say this, for the listeners who are out there, we want your calls today.
We see y'all out there. We see you out there.
We actually have a counter here, and we know how many of you are listening.
Yeah,
we're looking over your shoulder. We can hear you. We can see you. No, but we had. I mean, if for those who listen to both shows, on Friday we had the most calls we've ever had in either show in years, which was really cool. We didn't get to everything we wanted to talk about.
Didn't I say we got to stop with these calls?
Yeah, after a minute we were like, all right, okay, we probably can't take anymore, which is kind of a cool feeling to go from, like, we know we have an audience out there, but not everybody is always calling in, and that's fine. But it is this is an interactive show. I am getting ready to post on the Houston Freethinkers forum at thehoustonfreethinkers.com a new post for today. So if you want to follow along on the stories that we're going to be covering today, you can check it out there. And not only through the social media, we have Freethinker Radio on Facebook, where you can follow our posts. We have the HoustonFreethinkers.com. We're playing local music, but the phone calls are an important part for us too.
It's sort of
we want you guys to call in.
It's like a choose your own path radio show.
Choose your path.
Do you want us to continue talking about these stories?
Do you want us to keep asking you for phone calls, or do you want to satisfy our need to talk to human beings? You decide.
713-526-8737. Let us know.
8737.
Yeah, 713-526.
And at any point, we're open to calls at any point. There's no like, it's now it's call-in time.
Now's the time. No, we're not. Now.
Call in now or now or now. But
yeah.
So another week here in Houston, Texas. One thing I'll just mention before we go into some news and whatnot and some other events. This weekend, Micah and I attended the United for Common Ground Summit, which we talked to you about on Friday's show, for those who tuned in on the FM side, where we interviewed Jason Bassler and Matt Savoy of the Free Thought Project, founders of the Free Thought Project, and talked to them about this event, kind of, I guess we were calling it a summit, but basically a meeting of the minds, a gathering of individuals who are a range of topics. You had some crypto journalists, you had some maybe more people on the financial side, you had some tech guys, you had some journalists, some activists, some organizers. There was a few artists and musicians in there. Micah representing Visionary Noise, as well as other causes, and just so a good mix of people who are in general content creators in a number of different ways. I mean, I guess that's probably the common theme there, but also people who were anti-war, pro-peace, people who are against censorship, and people who are looking to
trying to interact with the public in a way.
interact with and build community. So we had people from all over the United States fly here to Houston, and we had people calling in through the Zoom call, listening from participating from South Africa, from the UK, from really all over the world. It's an international thing, and there was about 26, 7 people in person, and another 20 or so participating online. And these people collectively reach, hundreds of millions of people between the various outlets and the individual efforts. So overall, like a nice effort, a first step in the new direction, we hope, in the right direction. There were some common themes that came out of that, and those will be put into action hopefully in the coming months and the rest of this year. So for those who follow independent media, like the Free Thought Project, the Anti-Media, or Freethinker Radio, or the Conscious Resistance, or whatever channels you have, definitely there is a lot of good things on the horizon, or at least the potential for that, right? And now we see when the difficult works, if we can make it happen. So I'm excited, and I think people came away from the event excited. And I was also happy just to get people to come experience Houston in a different way and have that be the base of operations for this. So that's cool.
And that spot there, that building, I mean, over there on Jensen, 333 Jensen, that was a tremendous building. I've never been to it before.
TBH Center, it's a Latino Cultural Arts Center. Definitely a good spot for, if you're looking for a venue for your events or to check out the events they put on. Great stuff there. Yeah. We were very thankful to them for working with us. And because originally the idea was to do it at some kind of meeting hall or banquet room at a hotel or something, and not only is that extremely expensive, but before we were like, well, let's hold off from that and let me check out this community center because it's right in my neighborhood, and it's also something local, more that probably could use the support and the attention more than the Hilton Ballroom downtown or something like that. So I was thankful we were able to go with that option, support someone local. All right, Micah, what you got? What did you do this weekend other than that? Or what's coming up this weekend? Isn't there something coming up this weekend?
Oh, my goodness, all kinds of stuff. The Heights Epicurean Market is this weekend, so I don't know. The weather looks like it might rain in the morning, but, if it doesn't, because it's often off, that can change. But there's all kinds of things going on in Houston in addition to that. So, we should talk more about those things. But, we're already looking at 412 here. We've got a lot of stories to get into. Harris County got stuff going on. Harris County's Commissioner's Court's got stuff going on. Okay.
Well, tell us about it.
All right, man. Fine. I'll tell you. You want to know? I guess that's why you're listening. Thanks for listening. Call in and let me know how disappointing I am at 713-526-8737. Harris County's extending early vote. I'm not paying attention to the light now. Harris County extends early voting hours for a special House election. So that's still going on. I guess Harris County Clerk Diane Troutman announced that the House District 145 special election begins next week, and, they're going to have longer hours. So in case you thought there was no more electing going on, well, there's still some electing going on. And, thanks, Chronicle, for giving me a very short version of that, because I can't get the full news that I could use without a script.
Without paying for it?
Yeah, I got to get a outside script.
Well, I got this one here. This one's kind of interesting. It says that a survey reveals misconceptions and opinions Houstonians have about Muslims. This is coming from Houston Public Media, which is, of course, a service of the University of Houston.
According to one opinion about them. They're Islamic.
According to this poll, it says more than 70% of respondents think Muslims are making positive contributions to the country, but 31% believe they are sympathetic to terrorist attacks. I'm not quite sure the point of this, but it's a survey that was conducted by the D.C.-based think tank New America, and one of the senior fellows and director of Muslim Diaspora Initiative talked about the study with Houston Matters recently and basically said that it was conducted leading up to the midterm election, which, of course, is a pretty divisive time in the country. That's an interesting time to take the poll, and I bet that would probably skew opinions around the election, my guess. The survey showed that Houstonians who were interviewed don't know that Muslims comprise approximately 1% of the population. And this guy explained that after combining the answers provided by respondents who live in Texas's biggest city, the average answer was that Muslims make 19% of the population nationwide. The survey also found that nearly 80% of Houstonians think that diversity is good for America, and 71% believe that Muslims are making contributions to country and society. Just interesting little notes, not breaking headlines, but just kind of a take on what people in Houston feel. And on that note, I do want to say, so it says 80% of Houstonians think that diversity is good for America, right? And that's of the people polled. Obviously, they didn't ask every single Houstonian.
Diversity.
And well, what I think about this is, we're always hearing about how Houston is the most or one of the most diverse cities in the country as far as types of ethnicities and languages and cultures that are represented, and definitely food. You can find all kinds of food. And I typically, I don't think it's an ace in the whole argument, but I do think that Houston is an example of a place that is pretty diverse and doesn't seem to be tearing people apart at
thinking that,
into shreds.
Although there are a lot of shootings.
No, they're definitely. I get the daily emails. There definitely are a lot, but we don't necessarily know that those shootings are.
They don't seem to be related to tearing people apart.
Yeah, well, I had somebody recently on a YouTube comment when I basically said what I just said, that hey, I live in this city where we're the most diverse place in the country, and I don't see this, people just constantly. I don't constantly see hate crimes going on or race-related violence or things like that, and I don't. I mean, like if that's going on, it doesn't seem to be. A widely reported thing, let's say that. I'm not saying that there's no for anyone listening, I'm not trying to say that there's no racism in Houston or that there's no bigotry or anything like that, but I'm just saying I don't think that the violence that's typically taking place in the city is predominantly around that, which to me would disprove this idea that when you put diverse amount of people into a big place that it's necessarily going to end in, chaos and violence. Yeah, so just an interesting little local study here. I got one more I'll throw your way, Micah, and then I'll let you go at it. This one's interesting too. Coalition of Houston pastors renew call to secure the border. And this is kind of, a local story with a...
What do they call those pastors that work for the
national
government?
bent on it. I don't know. What do they call them?
No, they got a phrase for them. I just don't remember it. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can't think of the word. It says a group of Houston pastors has renewed their call for greater border security and immigration reform, saying that President Trump's goal, that they support Trump's goal to secure the border. Pastor Hernan Castano, director of Hispanic Church Development within the U.S. Pastor Council, says, quote, I think what the president is really trying to get across is that we have got to secure the border, and we got to do it with first priority over everything else, and we agree with that. The U.S. Pastor Council was started as the Houston Area Pastor Council in 2003 by a group of interdenominational pastors. It has since expanded to represent over 1,000 pastors from across Texas. And he's
sounds like a cult.
This pastor said the group's main concern is to prevent drugs and crime from entering the country, quote, whether that's the wall, including electronic surveillance and military presence, whatever's necessary to do the job. Most drugs, however, enter the United States through legal ports of entry. And in 2010, the same group drafted what they called the Pastor's Declaration on Border Security and Immigration Reform, where they called for securing the borders, reforming the immigration system, and implementing a process for immigrants to obtain legal status, which all of that generally sounds kind of sane to me. I'm not one to typically support the man that is sitting in the presidential office, but not just because of who he is, but just because I don't agree with most of the policy he has. But I do think, and it's just my 2 cents, that whether we're talking about the United States as a national superpower of the world, or we're talking about your tiny co-op community of a bunch of hippie, parents or whatever, what have you, right? Just a small community all the way to the big nation, that you're probably going to want to have some sort of norms or rules for who comes into your community, right? And you could call those immigration, regulations. Yeah, I'm saying these are just different terms. My point is that I think that everybody generally believes in some type of borders, whether that means the borders you believe in are just the private property to your property, which I think generally is the border most people agree with, right? You might not believe in the state-run borders and them gassing people, but generally down to your house, to your community, to the nation.
Your room.
Yeah, your room. There's a discussion that I think could be had if we could cool the emotions and figure out, how to do that. Like I'm not really interested in the national interest of the nation. I think more on the individual level, but I do think, thinking from that perspective, it makes sense that they would want to say, hey, we have people who are coming here illegally and they're not making the process. Maybe you need to make the process better. I mean, there's just discussion to be had, and just simply saying, hey, we shouldn't have any discussion about that.
Yeah, it's like one or the other, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, either we get everybody in and they all become naturalized citizens, or no, we build a wall and nobody gets in. It's like there's no middle ground about how can we work on this, and you know what I mean? It's just...
Yeah, I do know what you mean. It does seem like a historic recurrence, though, with major issues all the time, that you get one option or the other, no discussion, and that's kind of analogous to just railroading things through.
Cramming them through and just giving people 2 false binary options. Here, either support the call for shutdown unless we get a wall, or support the call for shutdown unless all these people get naturalized or whatever.
Meanwhile, they talk about compromise, but when it comes to anything like this, they're all so heated and passionate about it that they rarely are able to even listen to hear the other individual. And I think that's part of the problem, and one of the things we really need to work on as far as reducing the divide in this country in our own lives. Like, all of us learn to listen more. And, so one thing I did want to talk about that's not directly news related, and since I went to that learning to listen more and kind of, backing down division, another idea is like people taking things personal, Derrick. I wanted to somehow bring that up, this show, and wanted to get into that. And I hope some of the callers maybe want to get into that too at 713. Oh my God, what's our number?
713-526-8737.
All right. And, so like, you know what I mean about people taking personal, and I think a lot of people out there do know what I mean about people taking things personally. I mean, we all have done it, right? Taking things personally, but it gets in the way of freedom sometimes, doesn't it? Because you sit there and you think people mean things towards you, and really you're letting your life be determined by these ideas, these thoughts that you don't even know if they're true sometimes. At least when you're taking things personally, you don't. So, yeah. Moving forward.
No, I think that is an important point to say. I think that what the other day somebody mentioned to you about the book, The Four Agreements.
Yeah, definitely. Miriam brought that up. But this personal thing, something I think we've talked about for a long time.
The two things that I think, the reason I think that book is vital is kind of what you're saying there, is because he basically says, like, don't take things personal, but that also kind of is hinged on his other one, which is don't make assumptions, right? Because they're kind of tied in together, right? Yeah. Because he's like, you spend all this energy making assumptions about a situation, about what this person's thinking, or what's this going on, or somebody says something and you take it personal to the heart, and then you can't hear what the lesson is. There's a lot of things to come from that. So I definitely have tried, and try to remind myself when things are going on, like, oh wait, hold on, why am I personalizing this or feeling attacked about this? How, what is, and really
that
try
should
to
show something about
become
ourselves.
aware of yourself, like, okay, like I'm feeling triggered for something somebody just said, or something, they just made me feel some type of way, and I need to figure out why I feel that way, instead of just reacting and going off the handle, or wait, let me just comment back to them, if I'm speaking on like social media or whatever, because I think that happens a lot on social media, because you can't tell a person's language, or you can't really tell their sarcasm,
bare words,
So it's really easy to have miscommunication on the internet.
Yeah, for sure. All right, but obviously it's something that can get in the way of freedom. That's something other than government, and other than people putting a boot on your neck and stuff like that. So I kind of want to make sure we bring up those sort of issues and empowerment issues that can move us, more towards freedom in our own lives, as well as, all the stuff that we're always talking about. Oh, here's something kind of throw you a different way, and it's just news here in Houston, but good stuff kind of happens all over the place. And never mind, I'm not going to bring it up. There ain't no good news, sorry.
For a second, Micah thought he had a good news. Wait, hold on. Upon closer look, this is horrible. This is not good.
Well, a guy saved a guy, and unfortunately he died 2 weeks later. But a Good Samaritan rescued it was an HPD officer that he rescued from a burning car. He died 2 weeks later. But, that's the thing, is we're all in this together, whether you're a police officer, a soldier, a border patrol person, etc. And the way we relate to human beings not only determines, we're getting a call, stuff about us, but, maybe someone to save us.
All right, we got a call in there. And, Micah's shooting out some wisdom there. We're talking about not taking things personal. We're talking about the border. We're talking about all kinds of issues here on Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston on the HD2 dial. We're here every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. and then on Fridays on the FM dial from 3 to 4. And it looks like we got our first caller of the day, so let's go ahead. Who are we talking to today?
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
All right. This is MOD.
I thought it was you.
Yeah, you smelt me a mile away, man.
How are you doing?
All right. Y'all have anything you want to inquire about, or?
Well, I don't know if you've been listening already and heard anything we said, but we'd love to hear. What do you think about people taking things personal? Let's start there. Like you what are your thoughts on that? People just maybe not taking enough time to hear what other people have to say, and instead personalizing and then just going from that emotional place.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes natural. I think I know it's proven that you can engineer consent to where you can put feelers out there and sort of steer populaces or areas of the public's opinion by stroking their fear. Usually that's what happens with the result of terrorism is what? Nationalism. And then, fear and nationalism. So there's a reactionary aspect we all have. At a social level, it would be, to retaliate or scapegoat a boogeyman. Or with racial stroking, we can do that, in the past couple of centuries in this republic, it's been engineered quite well. It's very well. I'll just throw this out here. The FBI has commandeered the KKK since 1949, so just let you chew on that one.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate your insight there. We actually tried to get this author named Stephen Raby, I believe is his last name, and he wrote a book about the CIA working with the AFL-CIO down in South America, specifically in Guyana, which was formerly a British colony. and how the CIA worked with them to send money and funds down there to groups specifically to create race riots, to create division and the people. And so, yeah, what you're talking about there as far as being able to be steered, I want to bring it back down to the individual level, though. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like, like, I don't know, at work or with your friends or spouse or what have you, and somebody says something and you find yourself, like, reacting and then later kind of reflecting, like, dang, I totally just took that personally and maybe out of context, or just, you had something to reflect on later. Have you had that experience?
No, I'm a vegetable. No. When I'm a child, yes, we got in fights, and then the older we get, you're a product of your surrounding, of your environment. So if you have a surrounding that instills reactionary, like, how you see other people from, like, your home and the tribe that you hang out with, so to speak, you build a base of opinion. Or you can be, what's the word, colorblind, and really not know and be ignorant to racism. For me, back to the question, I would say my dad brought me up to never say cop or pig, the proper title for everything, police officer, African, Asian, whatever. So I'm not saying we all have a sense of, all of us have a bit of bias to other, ills or people. That's to say it doesn't exist would be a lie. But that's not one of my bigger problems. Only, I guess, fighting in high school with somebody calling me a name, that'd probably be the only kind of stroking reactionary.
All right, bro. Well, I appreciate your call again, man. Before we let you go today, we want to just say thank you for listening. And what do you think is at the moment is the most important issue on deck? And we'll take a few minutes to talk about that.
Just that we now are there in full totalitarian corporate fascism. The party system is completely owned by corporations. People are kept in place and promoted through non-disclosed campaign contributions via Citizens United in 2005. So as long as we have in our Constitution that for the last two election cycles, 95% of the appointees in congressional office election wins are through the caucuses that have received the most money. And until we remove Citizens United from our Constitution, or as a corporation being a person that doesn't have to disclose what funds go to which candidate, until we do that, and until we get K Street out of Washington, which the cockroach man Tom DeLay, the Hammer, instilled in 2005 with other K Street banshees like Casino Jack Abramoff, Ralph Reed, Grover Norcrest, don't sign this tax bill. Those folks instilled lobbyists in the D.C., the District of Columbia, and that was 43,000 lobbyists. Now, it's more than doubled since then, and those lobbyists are now called ALAC, American Liberty, Equality, whatever it said. They're down at the city municipal levels. Houston has them. Our capital has them. And so until we get lobbyists out of our government, and we are fully owned. I'll leave with this. Mussolini said, when you can't stick a cigarette roll in paper between the state and the media, you have full tilt or corporate fascism. And that's where we are. China is run by Communist China. The corporations are run by the government, no? And the United States, who runs the government? The corporation. So anyway, until we get the lobbyists out of Washington and out of our cities, municipalities, and until we get rid of Citizens United, nothing's going to change anytime soon. And that's what we got to have progressive efforts with.
We definitely agree that you're right that there's a corporate-state relationship that keeps people from being free and definitely interferes and intervenes in a lot of our areas of our life. Thanks for calling again, brother. We appreciate the support, man.
Bye. Definitely. Thanks, man. Have a good one. Peace.
That is our regular caller, MOD. We're thankful for those who listen and those who have been listening for years. Maybe we're thankful for that. And we look forward to more calls. We want to hear from more of you. Of course, the number is 713-526-8737. We are doing our best not to hang up on people that call, and so far we're on a streak. So if you call in, you might not get hung up on. That's 713-526.
I'm actually doing about 89 percentile, but I haven't hung up on anybody. I'm just saying I'm not really giving it the whole 100%. But if I get more calls and my blood gets flowing, and my efficiency goes up, it's kind of strange. So
yeah, the more calls, the better we get.
Yeah.
But lots to consider there. There's definitely, I think, everybody listening to this station on either side, the FM or HD side, pretty much on any day of the week, probably on any station, even if they're not a news station. Like, for example, if you were tuned in before us, you heard Sumo World Radio. He plays hip-hop. He talks about, what's on his mind. He interviews other hip-hop artists. I think even his audience would probably say, yeah, the corporations and the government are in bed together. And maybe that we're in 2019 and that's become common knowledge.
It's an accepted fascist state, but people don't call it that.
Yeah, and it's like we're aware of it, but I don't know that it's any better. Like you said, it's accepted, right? So did it move from we sort of skipped the outrage phase?
It was accepted in Italy in World War II. It was accepted in Nazi Germany, this form of government. They just called it something different.
So people just move from,
and I shouldn't say form of government because it's like this superimposed thing on top of the structure of the government. Like we walk around pretending and believing and standing court cases that the Constitution is the basis of the law of the land. Yet this superstructure kind of negates many aspects that was there to defend. And I'm not saying that is infallible. But it's obvious that this extra stuff, this extra fascist state, is kind of like an add-on to,
It's a bonus round.
Yeah.
It's an extra toy in your Happy Meal.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think there's something that may be a little bit awry with corporations that we should probably dig into, talk more about. We often have talked about corporations. I think in the end, if no one is responsible, then no one will be responsible. And that's the problem with, making a corporation the same as a person. I mean, people need to be able to act as groups, right, and come together and have that group act as an entity in different ways. But I don't know, something about the structure of it, something about the way that, think of things like the Exxon Valdez even, the way these things are dealt with, and no one is really responsible. So,
speaking of responsibility, Micah, I want to just jump into this article. This is just something that popped up. It's
aliens.
Dang it. You stole it from me. No, it's and this is kind of not, again, it's just sometimes the pieces that we talk about. Yeah, I saw that one. Some of the news we talk about, guys, just so those are aware, like we'll get into the nitty gritty that, like, you're going to hear the Paul Craig Roberts. I guess we could play that interview today in the second half. We haven't played it on the station.
For sure.
Yeah, so you'll hear some of that interview then today. Paul Craig Roberts talked about everything from 9/11 to the Yellow Vest protests in Paris to relations with China and Russia, and we talk about those deep things like that, and we also get into local issues, but sometimes we just talk about culture and philosophy and whatever is on our mind. But this article here is saying that people who roam in public filming, whether you're filming the police or just like, say, a YouTuber who's filming their life pretty much as a lot of the younger generation are doing with video games and things, that experts now are saying that they might be dangerous. The terrorism experts are saying that people who are roaming around filming everything could be dangerous for cops.
This is exactly what we were talking about a minute ago. Check it out. Metro buses, they roll around filming. Police cars, they roll around filming. See, these collectives, these groups aren't dangerous when they do it, but you are.
Well, so get this. Like, it's focused even more specifically, right, on not just people who are out there YouTubing, right, and doing this, but it says this group is armed with cell phones, cameras, and sometimes handguns. These self-described First Amendment auditors traipse through government buildings, rope through the halls of police departments, and wander around airports and natural gas plants across the country. Usually refusing to identify themselves, they zoom in on officers and employees, calling them by name and often making them visibly uncomfortable, sometimes even frightened. Occasionally, and especially if the encounters become confrontational, they stream their videos live, prompting their viewers to call the police departments and other offices to protest what they call wrongful treatment of the auditors. The videos are then posted to YouTube, where they receive thousands of views and elicit a barrage of comments. And so these auditors have been ramping up and popping up in Kansas City area, Kansas, Missouri, Kansas City, Liberty, Raytown, Parkville, Independence, Shawnee, Overland Park.
I guess it's a fine line, right? I mean, it's a fine line, right? Going around armed and shooting video. I do think, nobody wants a camera coming up in their face and stuff like that and someone being hostile.
But I think it does get to the question of how do we hold them accountable? If maybe this might not be your direct, because people say, well, we hold them accountable by the ballot box, right? Well, obviously that's not fixing, that's not working things. Like, because that was the old argument. You can just vote them out the next time, right? We'll just get rid of them. And that
you could send their opponent a handgun.
Hey, this is your, inspiration. But so I think the theme, whether or not people out there support open carrying or support going out there and filming the police, which you have the right to, the whole goal here is to hold, like I said, it's a First Amendment audit. They're auditing public servants to see, are they respecting the First Amendment? Now, some people will say they're being provocateurs. They're coming directly to the cops, and they interviewed one of the guys who is an auditor, and he said, the intent is never to scare anybody. The intent is never to freak anybody out. I'm a reasonable guy. I'm not a radical. I'm not crazy. All I wish to do is go into the buildings unmolested and film. But critics, including domestic terrorism experts, say the tactics are intimidating and sometimes downright scary, and that the auditors seem intent on inciting authorities. Bob Podair, former police chief of West Memphis, Arkansas, and they just include this, whose son and another officer were gunned down by anti-government sovereign citizens during a traffic stop in 2010.
It sounds familiar, like a formula, like you put some side stuff here so you associate.
It's like, by the way, this other guy, and so he says, I'm definitely concerned. These are the same tactics that sovereign citizens use. So they're trying to equate people who, and again, like even that term, some would say sovereign and citizen is kind of an oxymoron, but either way, it's, it's a kind of catch-all term they use for people who film the police, who believe in the rights, who reject the federal government. Often they say people who, think gold is valuable, who don't support the Federal Reserve, who don't think that, state regulations are good.
I got a question. So gold is not valuable? All these stores that say we buy gold?
No, but the terrorists. Yeah. The terrorists are the only ones, and these sovereign, citizen, domestic extremists. So this guy, former police chief, says, these are the same tactics the sovereign citizens use. The language they use, going into city office buildings, refusing to give their names, but demanding you give yourselves, taping everybody. They're harassing city employees and government employees, and there you've got no legitimate reason for being there other than just to film. But again, if you're paying taxes on these buildings and on these people...
So you see what they call it if you go there to film.
Yeah, it's harassment. They're trying to provoke these people to make an arrest or hit them or whatever. The problem is the employees don't know how to handle it. They're not sure what to do. And as the Kansas City Star explains, let's see what their definition here is. Sovereign citizens believe the government is corrupt and out of control. Wow, that's such a wild idea. Therefore,
I used to call that American.
Therefore, they do not recognize local, state, or federal or authority or tax systems. That is true there, but I know plenty of people who would say, yeah, wouldn't recognize.
Thoreau was a sovereign citizen.
Yeah, and then plenty of people don't use that. And it says, not all are violent, at least they're nice enough to include that. But in recent years, they have come to be considered a top domestic terrorism threat by the FBI. So, yeah, just any thoughts on that, feel free to call in 713-526-8737. Is this pushing things too far? Is this an acceptable way to hold people accountable? Because as we said, if you can't expect to hold them accountable in the ballot box, and if you can't, what other options do you have to do? I'm not, this isn't people violently attacking them. They're going to public buildings, court offices, police places. From what it seems, they're not shoving their ways in. They're not trying to get behind into, employee areas. They're coming to places where there's public space and where government officials are available, and just filming them and trying to,
I guess, way you would normally interact with a government official.
Yeah, the way you would normally interact with a government official, but with a camera in your hand. And maybe they might say certain rhetoric that you don't support, or you're like, well, why do they need to open carry? Well, maybe they're living in a place where it's legal, so apparently that's their right and their legal...
Why are you asking why they exercise their rights?
And I guess that's the kind of thing, yeah, it's like... And I'm of course, I'm playing the devil's advocate here of those who would be like, well, why do they need to do that? Because, it's funny to me. I have a friend. He was actually at the summit we were talking about earlier this weekend. And this guy, he lives up in Dallas, is a father of 2 kids for sure.
2.5.
2.5 maybe. He's got the average house. Nice big house, backyard, 2.5 kids, a couple of cars. He's living the American dream, right? And he loves to travel with his AK in the car. And his kids and wife are there. And when he's driving around, he's got his little handgun in his back. And some people are like, oh, this guy must be, impotent, or, he's got something to prove kind of thing, right?
He's got 2.5 kids. How can he be impotent?
He's also one of the most giving people I know, who goes out there and feeds the homeless in Dallas, and specifically in Dallas, where the police kept going and throwing away homeless people's food and throwing away
homeless people,
throwing away them in the gutter, throwing away their stuff. he and his crew of friends, I can't remember what they call themselves, Texans for something, but they went down there open carrying. They gave out toys, they gave out food. And would you imagine this? When you're open carrying, the cops don't throw things away. They let people take the food and they take the stuff.
So they don't go over there and do that provocative stuff like in your face. You want to debate me? You want to debate?
No, they're just guys who just, and like I said, they just want to exercise their right. They're not going there.
No,
like,
I mean the police. Once these guys are open carry, they don't go up to them and like start saying stuff like that.
No, the police. I mean, they from what I've seen, they tend to be a little bit more timid, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like if people are, I'm not saying we need to be armed to the teeth necessarily, but it does make a difference when
maybe just the hip.
The cops are less likely, it seems, to just harass people and mess with them when they know that they are protected. Now, again, you might not agree with that, but at the end of the day, has anybody been harmed? Has anything been done wrong? Okay, you felt uncomfortable, but is that illegal? Is that, should we stop that? I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, but my point is, people help people. People go out there are trying to hold the government officials accountable, and if you're wondering why people feel the need to go into buildings and film government officials, perhaps it's gotten to the point where police kill people's dogs and police kill other human beings and get away with it. Government officials have open connections to corporations that have conflicts of interest and nothing comes of it. People try to vote these people out and they vote new people in, and then those same conflicts of interest pop up. Like, people are looking for different answers these days. They're not just going to settle for, I guess I'll figure it out in 2 years.
And they're not going to stop doing that just because you remove their Facebook page,
Yeah, I mean, it's so, yeah, I don't know. Just another little area, I guess, a type of activism. And overall, I would say if they're not hurting anybody and they're not threatening anybody, then I don't know that there's really anything they can do about it. Obviously, they can try to do what they're doing here, which is equate their actions to terrorism and say, oh, look, this is just like the terrorists do.
Filming people. I got a little local here. This is out of Harris County Commissioner's Court. I don't know what's all going on over there, and my computer's kind of bogging down, so I can only cover part of this story and hopefully go to music or you cover something. But it turns out that things are going on in the Commissioner's Court here in Harris County. It's kind of interesting. In past twice monthly meetings at the county downtown admin building conclude in less than an hour, and it turns out that just last week's meeting, which attracted more than 250 people between the chambers and an overflow room, adjourned after 6 hours and 52 minutes, and included a recess for lunch. Turns out that people campaigned on making county government more open, less mysterious to residents, said she was pleased with turnout, et cetera, et cetera. But some of the topics that were proposed by the new county clerk to implement county-wide voting centers. Not sure what I think about that, but you'll probably hear us talk more about it. Sort of request from Precinct 2. Also a feasibility study of a $15 an hour minimum wage for county employees, and a call to direct the Flood Control District to determine how $2.5 billion in flood bond projects will benefit rich and poor areas equally. So these are things that, whether you believe in government or not, this debt, this $2.5 billion bond has already been thrust upon people. And so now, some people are meeting in a room to decide how to spend that money. And it seems like there's some mandate that they must spend it equally between, income areas. So if that's something you want to get in there and, do something about, it sounds like right now is pressure on the county commissioner's court. Yep.
County Commissioner's Court. That's interesting. Yeah, and this is one of the things that I mentioned this weekend is that, if you're not keeping up with what's going on in your backyard, obviously what's happening on the national level is captivating. It's like its own little soap opera following all the drama going on, right? And, international events, they can seem far away, but you realize like, wow, if these crazy countries go to war, I might, and I might not have a life anymore. But there's also a lot of corruption and, just shadiness going on, and good things, of course, going on in your community. And one thing I advise is no matter where you're living at, go look up your city website. So, for example, cityofhouston.gov, and on there's a section for media, for press releases. And on some city websites, you can sign up to get these emailed. So, right, you might get an email saying, basically I signed up for the HPD press releases, for the mayor's office, for the fire department, and for a few other departments, right? And so every day I wake up and throughout the day I get an email that says, fire in this part of town, car crash over here, shooting here, or the mayor's going to be here, or the police chief's going to be here. My point is, if you're an activist, you're somebody who's concerned with what's going on in the world, like plugging yourself into those things and just getting those little emails, and it may be different, but I guarantee your city has something similar. That can be very helpful, especially if you're an activist who organizes and often wants to know where chief of police might be and where the mayor might be and things like that. There's a lot to be gained from us just putting some time in and some effort in and seeing what's happening in our own backyards and not forgetting about that. So I recommend you do a little bit of digging, see what's happening in your backyard. You want to go to a song after this, or what are we doing?
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a break, go to a song. Hope my computer gets back. Thank you for listening in on Free Thinker Radio. Again, that phone number is 713-526-8737. We're always happy to hear from you. And I guess we're going to hear a little bit of a former guest, her new single that's out, Cliche, Win. And we might actually go for 2 songs. I don't know. We'll see. We'll be
play
back.
1 or 2. We'll be back in just a few minutes. 90.1 KPFT, Free Thinker Radio.
Me too. Yeah. Let's go. Slipping down the below, getting money as I go. So hard like the damn soul glow. Hustle hard all around the H-time. Now it's cliche, sitting fat down inside. The city where I'm from, they keep the diamonds in their mind. Sexy little mama, see we all about to ride. I'm a good daddy, throw your hood in the air. If you own the paper chase, rep this here. We get money, so we all have fun. Been a hood celebrity since I was young. Got the black parties off the chain in the hood. From the north to the south, together, so the stood. One hood, one city, that's how we win. Hating and flexing ain't gon' get us all in. So I'ma hold it down and win for the H. Leave a trail in the States while they read my place. Doesn't matter what they say. No, no. Get this money that belong to me. You know, gon' stay on the grind. Keep my head up, keep on moving. Keep my head up regardless, baby. I'm gonna win, yeah. I'm gonna win. Say, hey, put your money where your mouth is. Do you know where the South is? I can tell what the route is. All day for my bosses. It doesn't matter what they say, I'm getting this money, man. I'm looking good and my head is to the ceiling, man. Classified lady, yeah, you know the name. When for all of my fallen soldiers that was in the game. Screwed up in the deck, you gotta pay respect. Screws who the originator, and that's a fact. If you got love for the H, then we gon' throw it back. Southside still holding, believe that. I know what they say. What they say, yeah. Get this money that belong to me. Get this money that belong to me. Keep my head up, keep on moving. Keep my head up and keep on moving. I'm gonna win, yeah. I'm gonna win, yeah.
No matter what they say, I'm still gonna win. Still coming down like Patty Blunt in the bin. Still reppin' screwed up click and we set the trends. Turning 1 into 2 like them Bubba twins. Got a duffel bag and I keep it full of ends. Heard them boys hating on me, yeah, that's many men. 1 shot from the Glock, put them in the spin. Still rap behind the balls like I'm in the pen. But I done hooked her with that grim and the cliche. I pull up in the Porsche and she in the rake. Got them Girl Scout cookies like we in the bay. Gotta pass up on these haters cause they in the way.
Doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what they say. Get this money that belong to me. Get this money that belong to me. Keep my head up, keep on moving. Gotta keep my head up and keep on moving. I'm gonna win, yeah. I'm gonna win, yeah.
Yeah. See, I remember back then, talking way back when. Yes, he know was in the Lexus, Corey Blunt was in the Benz. Me and all my friends chipping in 3 for 10. Now for my bones falling. Yeah, the sipping just began. Banging pop, sipping in with a bottle of gin. Rubbing wanna be a baller in them Impala with grin. 10 grand with a spin for the diamond with a grin. Screw still my DJ cliche, we bout to win. Still going in that match with no 10. Trying to run up on the plug, cut your whole body limb. Did it no friend, no we top 10. Southside still holding E&G once again. Let's go.
Doesn't matter what they say. No, no. Get this money that belong to me. You know, gonna stay on the grind. Keep my head up, keep on moving. I'm gonna keep my head up regardless, baby. I'm gonna win, yeah. I'm gonna win.
little bit of Cliche followed by Dinola out in New Orleans. So that's cool. On fire. Anyway.
Yeah, and where isn't there a spot online that people can find the songs that we played?
It's called the Internet.
All right. I mean, like the playlist, though, of like our specific.
Yeah, you can go to the archive and listen to the show again.
Oh, for some reason I thought it like listed it somewhere.
Well,
like
we
that,
list it, but I don't know if that goes anywhere. I wish it did. We should find out. And if you're listening, then you know the answer.
Well, once Micah starts posting the content he's sharing regularly, you guys will get to keep up with it. I'm trying to do as much as I can.
Once the admin for the HoustonFreeThinkers.com lets me know what happened to my account, then I'll know how to log in.
We'll have to find him.
Actually, there's no login on the page, remember? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a problem. You can sign up, but you can't log in.
Oh, that was a thing. All right, I'm getting on it.
All right.
In the meantime, though, let's talk about a couple more
aliens or hoaxes.
Local stories, including there is an alien UFO Texas story. And then we got plenty of national news, and I think we will play some of that Paul Craig Roberts interview. It's an hour long, so we at least should play, I think, half of it or so, and maybe give us a break while we're here in the studio.
We need to break something.
And then we'll play another 20 minutes of that on Friday, so you guys can hear that. And of course, you want to hear the whole thing. It is at youtube.com/conscious resistance.
It was very early in the morning.
I don't think there's any need to explain it. I think it's a good. People seem to so far have been very interested in the topics. As I said, we covered a wide range of issues, which is why it went into an hour long.
It's got a good number of spins.
So this one's interesting. This is a Texas story about eminent domain, and we were just kind of talking about this off air. New push for eminent domain reform expected in the Texas legislature.
They're going to get rid of it?
Says one oil and gas attorney says the fight over eminent domain gets, quote, bigger and tougher every session. And it says if you want to cook up a battle over private property rights in Texas, here's the recipe. Take a handful of sprawling cities and growing populations that are expanding into once rural areas. Add a booming oil and gas industry with a desperate need for new pipelines to move record high volumes of hydrocarbons, and sprinkle in the new electric lines needed to power both of these trends. In recent years, as companies and governments build more roads, power lines, and pipelines across Texas, rural landowners have become increasingly familiar with and angry about the powers of eminent domain. The efforts to check those powers at the state capitol haven't succeeded, but there's a new push on the horizon for the 2019 Texas legislative session. So for those who are listening who might not be familiar with the eminent domain phrase, it's essentially when public entities and sometimes companies can work with the government to take private property from individuals to build something. And basically what happens is they'll come to you and say, hey, we see you got some farmland here. We're going to build a freeway here, a pipeline, or whatever it may be. We'd like to give you this amount of money. And you say, no,
but
this is my family's land. We've been here for generations. I love this. I don't want to. I'm not going to take the money. And they say okay. And then they come back a couple months, years later, and offer you some more. And they keep coming until eventually they basically just go to their buddies in government and say, hey, we're taking this land. And they come to you and say, here's some money. This is all you're getting now, and we're taking it one way or the other. So that's essentially what eminent domain is. It's theft of private land.
It used to only be for stuff like, public utilities and things. People thought that the greater good, or whatever you want to say about that malarkey, was justifying it, right? But now we've seen and heard of it being used even to take and build places like retail shopping centers.
All kinds of areas. I mean, and again, to me, this is another example of like MOD. Our caller earlier was talking about corporate collusion, right? Because if a corporation can come in and say, hey, I have this project and I want to build it through this neighborhood, and they can, like any other, say, private individual, come in and say, hey, we want to make a deal. We want to buy your land. And that's fine, right? But then once they don't get their way and the person says no long enough, they go to their buddy, hey, buddy in government, mafia over here, can you guys coerce this person under threat of violence to force to give me their land now so I can make something and profit off that land that they're living in or using or owning for whatever reasons,
And pay more taxes.
So that's essentially what eminent domain is, and apparently there are two main advocacy groups here in Texas, the Texans for Property Rights and the Coalition for Critical Infrastructure, which are the two main groups involved in the debate. The Texans for Property Rights are lobbying for reform, and the Coalition for Critical Infrastructure is defending condemnation powers. Basically, the Coalition for Critical Infrastructure is a group of ranching and agricultural interests that they're an industry that represents the oil and gas industry, local governments, and business interests. So you have one side representing ranching and agriculture interests and property rights, and the other side representing the oil and gas and local governments and corporate interests on this side of this debate. So apparently this could come up in the Texas legislature this year, and honestly, whether or not you're in Texas, this issue is relevant because this happens all over the United States. I mean, as I said, if they want to build a freeway, then they will declare eminent domain. If they want to, build a shopping center, if they want to build a pipeline, wall.
What about all over by the
build
East
a
Coast?
wall.
What's that train there? Remember just about
the Hyperloop thing?
No, I'm sorry. We saw this where they were taking all this land anywhere within this long of the East Coast along the what's that train? I can't even remember it. The long train that runs north and south, and they run all over there. But whatever. We were talking about it. We were really concerned because it was the first time it had been done in such a blanket way that if you're anywhere near this, your property is considered federal government property or something.
Well, kind of to add to that, and this is related. It's not eminent domain specifically, but it is the federal government claiming a right to your private throwaway, right? Because the Border Patrol, the largest federal government agency, which I definitely have some news on them that I want to get into before we end today. We've talked about before about the Constitution free zone, 100 miles, right? They also have a rule that says they can come onto your property if it's within 50 miles of the border. They can just walk across your land, do whatever they want. So government has long claimed the right to just come onto your property whenever the heck they want. Soldiers, whatever, what have you, This isn't the first time they've tried to come onto your property and just claim ownership of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, just another eminent domain thing going on. Last thing I want to mention briefly, government shutdown continues day, 23, 20, something like that. And, of course, I don't want to be, too flip about it, as Micah says, but we had somebody call in a couple weeks ago that was a little upset about saying that it was a fear tactic. I still stand by that, and I still think that
fake news.
Certain people should reconsider their jobs if their jobs are working for the government in general. That's my opinion.
I started to think about it, though. It is sort of fake news then when you think about it, right? Because all these words are taken to mean something that they don't mean in their normal way. Now, a government shutdown, you think, the government shut down. That is not entirely the truth. Then they'll say, but Micah, it's only a partial government shutdown,
right?
They
qualify it.
See, yeah, and then there's a qualifier, and it moves forward. And so this is how it's like fake news, and it's built up like it's so dramatic. Here's this pile of trash in the state park because nobody could take the trash out, or, whoa, they don't show you the state park that had people come and take the trash out.
Yeah, they don't tell you about all the private institutions, the private individuals, different political parties, different just people on the street saying, hey, we want to come clean up the National Mall. We want to come clean up this state park. And it's happening in Texas as well. So, I don't know. It's definitely, like you said, it's the wording, it's the phrasing. Well, what I was getting to is I can say that I don't think it's as drastic as they're claiming, right? I don't think the world's falling apart because at one point the news reports were saying poop is piling up in the national parks and trash is filling up and there's trash all over the National Mall. It's chaos. It's like this madness. But here in Houston, we do have an actual repercussion from it. Bush's airport, George H.W. Bush, the Intercontinental Airport, big airport in Houston, Terminal B checkpoint apparently is closed due, or at least in part, to the government quote-unquote shutdown. TSA agents are among those required to work without pay during the partial government shutdown, and I guess apparently some of them are saying, screw that, we're not coming in. And
wait, you can't have it both ways now. This is just one of the drawbacks of being a government employee, right? It's a gamble. You might.
Yeah, exactly. If your government money is dependent on the people and the government functioning, so if the government stops functioning, the people stop coming to work. The government, it's
They're
funny.
We're just there for your money.
We're like, well,
we're only touching your junk for the money.
But the sad part is, and I think the really disturbing part, man, and this kind of does it is annoying, and is that these people are going to get paid anyways, because once the government shutdown, partial shutdown ends, they're going to get paid back time for the time that they had off. So, in some cases, obviously they might be struggling. People might really be struggling right now. So you're living check to check, then I don't know. Then I feel like that's can be difficult. And so this might be difficult for you coming to work with no pay when you're like, hey, I can go hustle, do some other way. I'm not going to come to work. But it's affecting the regular folk now, slowing down the airlines, and so we'll see how that affects, and it's affecting other ways. But overall, I do think the people are showing that we can take care of ourselves, and it's a great time.
And
like,
I think
so,
that's something we should talk about, right? Because, see, one of these articles I was looking at, and it's really just an opinion piece, basically mentioned that there was feces and junk like that, right? Like, so as people know how to use proper toilets in their campers and things like that, there wouldn't be these problems so much when the government shut down in the park. I mean, I know it sounds like a little trite way down the road, but what if these were the things we used government shutdowns to talk about from now on? Like, let's talk about human manure and compostable toilets, and like if you are staying at a park and it's not available for you, here's something you can do. I don't know, because I don't play with that, but we can figure it out.
Yeah, like, just I get what you're saying. You're saying that, like, people can find solutions to the things that are going on.
Yeah,
and
maybe we should use the
already seeing
shutdowns to activate that. Obviously, other people are doing this, but we should on the radio show.
Sure. And feel free to call in 713-526-8737. What are some ways you see government shutdown affecting life around you, and what can you do to counteract that or to overcome that?
Yeah, we don't need them to take the garbage or something like that. I don't know. My neighborhood had a private garbage collector, so I'm sure we had some other things, but, part of it is just that we have that system, so, it's thrust upon us. So, I don't know. Things to get into.
Yeah, 713-526-8737. Call into Freethinker Radio here on 90.1 KPFT Houston on the H2 dial. We would love to hear from you guys. We've heard from MOD today. We're in competition with our own show.
We're doing all right. We're in competition
on
with
Friday.
Our own
we
show.
get a lot of calls. We know we got a lot more listeners on Fridays, but we want to rep the HD side. We know we got at least a few of you out there. We can see the numbers. We know you're listening, and we want to hear from you. We know we probably got Crystal out there. We might have Mike from Australia. We haven't heard from him in a while.
Still out there listening.
So we're thankful to everybody who's listening. But feel free to call in, chime in, even if it's like, "Hey guys, thanks for listening," or whatever's on your mind. This is an open call-in show. There really is no topic off, the table.
With that being said, I'm going to UFOs.
Within FCC regulation. Go to UFOs. I love UFOs. I love UFO talk, especially if Texas.
Yeah, so, this one's kind of interesting. Aliens or hoaxes? More than 70 UFO sightings reported in Texas in 2018. I thought that was kind of interesting, right? As we get into this, it's about 77 UFO reports were made to the National UFO Reporting Center in Texas in 2018. The number reflects a steep drop from the 120 reported in 2017. Either it's UFOs or you're knowing what they are, like it's your friend the Martian, and so you're not like so much, oh my God, it's a UFO. You're like, it's my homie. Or maybe, they've gotten more better with hiding UFOs. I don't know. Or maybe there's just more lights. Either dozens of Texans watch too many sci-fi movies. That's what they say. See, trying to tell you that there's no such thing as a UFO. Or they legitimately spotted multiple unidentified flying objects across Texas skies. And turns out that UFO sightings have been declining worldwide since 2014. Wonder what you think about that, right? Why is that? And in Texas, the 77 UFO sightings were the drop from 120, as I said, the previous year. Among the 77 in 2018, 10% of them were reported in Houston. You think it's because of the population? It's
the biggest population in the state, so that might make sense.
More eyes on the skies.
One thing I do want to mention, because this is something I've been researching UFOs since I was like 6 years old. Just been a kind of hobby interest of mine. It's not something I spend a lot of time on in my personal work, and honestly, like, as I've gotten older, it's not that I don't believe it anymore, but I've become more skeptical, I guess, which is just, maybe that just happens over time. But I do think that what is newsworthy, and what also I'm still skeptical of, is that since 2001, literally over the last 20 years, and probably before that, but definitely in the last 20 years, there's been like more of a coordinated effort where there are different groups called like the Disclosure Project, the Full Disclosure Project, and these include current and former military officials, government employees, politicians who all say, hey, I was briefed on this regarding, extraterrestrial technology, or I witnessed this, or we do have this, black budget program that has been built from reverse engineered, technology. There's just anybody who bothers doing a little bit of search can find it. And I'm not just talking about, random quacks who were like, oh, I was a secretary at the, whatever, like actual people who are credentialed for whatever that's worth, right? And I am still skeptical, but I do think that's newsworthy when you've got all these different people coming together. There was actually a conference held the day before 9/11 in D.C. at the National Press Club where it was about this whole disclosure thing, and they had about 20 different officials who were the first time going on record and talking about it. And it's happened a few different times since then. So anybody who digs into that, you'll find it on your own. But for some, that will give it the credibility to say, see, this is what we've been telling you for years, that there is a secret going on. And for others, maybe there's ulterior motives. I don't know, but it's interesting to say that the mainstream never touches on those things. You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, in the last year, in 2018, we had the Washington Post and other mainstream news talking about UFOs. The Department of Defense released their video they said was from the 70s that showed a UFO, and it was kind of weird. All of a sudden, the Pentagon's releasing old UFO videos and saying, we don't know what this is, right? So it gets into a whole other show that our show, a whole other line of thought that our show typically doesn't go down that particular rabbit hole.
Some of the reports that were a little bit more, I guess, deserve a closer look or stood out were things such as, quote, a black isosceles triangle with 6 large faded lights around the inside of its outline, which was spotted in Houston in September. Previous month, a Spring resident spotted a cigar-shaped object in the sky, which matched a similar report they were getting from another city in Texas, Keller. They have photos and such, so well, who knows? That's what's just
it's all
one
interesting.
Of those things out there. So
very interesting. I'm definitely a UFO nerd. So if anybody wants to talk about that more later, send videos. Feel free to reach out. Not something I spend too much time on this show or really even elsewhere, just because I can't really say one way or the other confidently.
I think they're here because the magnetic field is acting up. Did you know about that? The North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, is now like in the eastern hemisphere.
Yeah,
and
it's been like
sped up,
moving.
Instead of 15 kilometers a year, it's sped up to 55 kilometers a year that it's moving. So that's kind of a drastic increase, and I wonder if that rate will accelerate. But yeah, it turns out the magnetic field is changing so rapidly that researchers have to fix the model. The error is increasing all the time, said Arnold Schulat, a geomagnetist at the University of Colorado Boulder, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Center for Environmental Information. Problem lies partly with the moving pole and partly with other shifts deeply within the planet. Liquid churning in Earth's core generates most of the magnetic field, which varies over time as the deep flows change. In 2016, for instance, part of the magnetic field temporarily accelerated deep under northern South America and the eastern Pacific Ocean. Satellites such as the European Space Agency's Swarm mission tracked the shift. By early 2018, the World Magnetic Model was in trouble. Researchers from NOAA and the British Geological Survey in Edinburgh had been doing the annual check of how well the model was capturing all the variations. They realized that it was so inaccurate that it was to exceed the acceptable limit for navigational errors. That's pretty bad, right? That was interesting situation they found themselves in. And so, these are massive jumps. The pole's going across. It's kind of crazy seeing it cruise out across Greenland and into the eastern hemisphere. The motion of the North Magnetic Pole made the problem worse. Pole wanders in unpredictable ways that have fascinated explorers and scientists since James Ross first measured it in 1831 in the Canadian Arctic. In the mid-1990s, it picked up speed from 15 kilometers to 55 kilometers per year. By 2001, it already entered the Arctic Ocean, where in 2007, a team including Chilhowat landed on airplane on the sea ice in an attempt to locate the pole. In 2018, it crossed the international date line into the eastern hemisphere and is now currently making a beeline for Siberia. Geometry of the Earth's magnetic pole or field magnifies the model's errors in places where the field is changing quickly, such as the North Pole. The fact that the pole is going fast makes the region more prone to large errors. To fix the World Magnetic Model, he and his colleagues fed it 3 years of recent data, which included the 2016 geomagnetic pulse. The new version should remain accurate, he says, until the next regularly scheduled update in 2020. So there's a lot more to the article you can get into, but I think it's definitely something worth noting. Magnetic, they've shown in the core of the Earth that the poles have reversed multiple times before. So, could be occurring. Who knows?
Interesting stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm interested to hear our listeners' thoughts on ideas like that, UFOs, aliens. Is it one big government fake psyop? Is there no UFOs out there? Is it all secret military technology, or is it obvious that there would be more life out there? What are your thoughts? 713-526-8860. 8737. And we got some more news. You want to get some more news? You want to go to the interview and come back, or what should we do?
I don't know. I kind of thought this one is kind of important.
Get into
Hit
it.
the headline, if nothing else. AT&T, man, I don't know if you want to believe them, but they say that they're going to stop selling location data.
Oh, finally.
Because someone's saying they're going to investigate. There's going to be a federal investigation into AT&T. But guess what? No longer will it sell, where you are, sell your phone data. It turns out the announcement follows sharp demands by federal lawmakers for an investigation into the alleged misuse of data. See, it's only things like this, right? Which came to light when Motherboard revealed a complex chain of unauthorized information sharing that ended with a bounty hunter successfully tracking down a reporter's device. You see, they want to silence the word that's coming out, to silence the journalist. Got a bounty hunter, to track them down through their phone. AT&T has already suspended, if you believe them, its data sharing agreements with a number of so-called location aggregators. Turns out Verizon location data was also being misused by prison officials to spy on innocent Americans.
Imagine that.
Yeah, Verizon. Where have I heard that name before? I love Verizon. I know. I feel like maybe I've heard of Verizon before.
Have they been making business deals in Houston lately? Maybe with the city council or the mayor?
That couldn't happen.
Something to do with 5G.
Faster, better. I love 5G.
I love 5G.
Yeah, it's intimate. Yeah, pretty serious stuff.
I like to get
in
intimate.
Characteristic fashion, T-Mobile CEO, we're getting everybody mixed here now.
Get them all in there.
Said that his firm would be, quote, completely ending location aggregator work in March. Verizon said in a statement Thursday that it would to wind down its 4 remaining location share.
We'll start winding down. That might take 10 to 20 to 30 years, but we'll wind it down.
We got to get that money to go ahead and have them 5G towers.
We couldn't just immediately wind down. That's just not safe.
Perhaps the only one with backbone, a Sprint spokesperson, didn't immediately respond for a request to comment.
We'll just ignore that and just...
Other critics said Americans have an absolute right to their privacy of their data. What do you think, Derrick?
Americans have an absolute right to their data.
To privacy.
To privacy? I do think so. I think that ideally in that situation, but also, unfortunately, in the day and age we're at now, like, you should just accept that anything you put online, somebody's got access to it. And, there are definitely, like, let's say Signal or certain apps and methods, VPNs. There's tools that you can use to try to protect your data. But generally, if there's something you got to say, or if you're having a secret affair or going somewhere you don't want someone to know about, you probably shouldn't be keeping your cell phone with you. You probably shouldn't be sending messages anywhere online, anywhere digital, because somebody could get that.
For sure. I'm going to wrap this one up quickly. Motherboard reported that major U.S. wireless carriers, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Sprint, have been selling the location data of their customers in an unregulated market in which Americans' personal information travels through several layers of third-party entities that buy the location data but are not authorized to handle such information. Not even sure how that makes sense. You own it, but you can't handle it. It's changing the definitions of ownership, right, as we go into the all this stuff. But and it goes on, sharing of phone location data was at the center of the report, began at T-Mobile, which shared it with a location aggregator, who shared it with phone location service, which shared it with a bounty hunter, who shared it with a source, who ultimately sent the phone's location to Motherboard. So they say there are some legitimate uses for sharing of location data, and the arguments are including detection of financial fraud, locating motorists who need roadside assistance. I think I could tell you where I am, personally. But according to the report...
It's easier for us just to track you 24/7, and then once we need it, we can just dig in there.
That's pretty much, yeah. And
OnStar's listening to you in case you didn't know.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you can hear things such as Sprint saying in a statement, protecting our customers' privacy and security is a top priority, and we are transparent about that in our privacy policy. Yeah. Yeah, and AT&T's little thing, and they go on.
Terms and limits do not apply.
Yeah. I think I've covered that enough, but I wanted you to know they're saying they're going to quit selling your stuff. Maybe.
I'm going to just touch on this one, and we'll get into the interview, because I think this is something Micah might enjoy and the listeners might enjoy, because it has to do with, the banks and people taking power into their own lives. And it's also a topic that we get into this interview with Paul Craig Roberts. But this weekend was Act 9, which was the 9th week of protests and, just street fighting with cops in some cases in Paris, France, and just around France as the Gilets jaunes, yellow vest protests continue, which really... have largely been ignored by the mainstream. They were getting reported on for the first couple of weeks, but independent journalists are still there, and every weekend it's just been mass protests. And it's not a left-wing thing. It doesn't appear to be a right-wing thing. It's not a nationalist, white supremacist thing. You see people out there with a range of opinions, and they're sick of taxes. They're sick of austerity. They're sick of a leader who's connected to Rothschild bankers, and they're sick of just all of this, right? So there was a big push this weekend, Saturday, January 12th, for what they were calling the collectors referendum. And it was a movement where individuals were calling on supporters to withdraw their savings from banks on this Saturday.
Sounds like a good idea.
And some people were saying, hey, yeah, use crypto or gold or silver as an alternative, take money out of the banks and put it into something else, things like that. So that was kind of interesting. And then coincidentally, and just, my heart really, hearts, thoughts, and prayers for whatever they're worth out to the individuals who were affected, because the day of this planned divestment, taking people's monies out of the bank, there was an explosion, what they're calling now a gas explosion in central Paris, which ended up killing so far 4 or 5 people that we know of for sure. And independent journalist Luke Rudkowski was there, and he was on site like just blocks away from the explosion, and he had a live stream this weekend that was covering the whole thing. And that's all we know, is that it happened at a bakery. Nobody so far has called it a terrorist attack. It seems to be, a gas attack. But like I said, Luke was there, and him and other people report not smelling gas in the air at all or anywhere. And he was literally, right there at the scene of the explosion. Take it for what it's worth. Some people with a more conspiratorial mindset have said, hey, that's coincidental that happens the weekend that people are preparing to pull all their money out of the banks. And yeah, so that's interesting. And unfortunately, like I said, some people have died. But the calls do continue. They are continuing to tell people to withdraw their money from the banks in France. So that, I think, could be the key to real power. That's where you really start hitting them in the
withdraw your money from the banks in France and here.
You know what I'm saying? But realistically, that's where I think we would see people starting to get worried. Like, hey, they're not just protesting anymore. They're actually trying to get away from our banking system. That might give some powerful people a little bit of shake in their boots.
And there's lots of ways. There's little ways, and nowadays people they used to talk about the cashless society and such. But look, man, everybody's already almost there, and it's like, think about it then where are you going to get anything besides?
People were cashless way before crypto with the credit cards already, or at least, largely.
No, that's what I'm saying, Like, think about it. Like, I've been thinking about it with regards to some of these panhandlers and stuff and how much worse off they must really be doing, because a lot of people don't have change anymore and they don't have these things. And I think it's kind of weird. Because think about it, everything else when you're doing it the other way is all of it's tracked all the time, and people are all, incensed about Cambridge Analytica and people looking in their Facebooks and stuff. But meanwhile, they just give this information, and then you have people complaining about going cashless, but they don't care. They just use their debit.
But they're never out in public with cash in their pockets.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, sorry, all I got is plastic. But all right, guys, we're gonna play this interview, at least about 20 minutes or so of it. This is Mr. Paul Craig Roberts. You'll get the intro. We'll be back. Who haven't seen that interview, do reference the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel, February 2015, where I speak with Mr. Paul Roberts about Ukraine, Russia, Kissinger. It was a whole different world at that time 3 years ago. But how are you doing this morning? Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Derrick. I'm looking forward to the interview.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've spoken. As I said, the world has changed. We're under a new administration. We have now a new year. We're going into 2019, and that's one of the reasons I want to touch base with you, not only because it's been a couple of years, but we're starting to go into a new year. We have a new, we have not only the Trump administration now in power, but we also have the Democrats coming into office. So there's a lot of changes going on, and as you are well aware, a lot of changes going on domestically and internationally. So we figured we would get into some of that. So let's go ahead and start. We were looking at your website this morning, and I noticed that you recently wrote about the 9/11 news and as it relates to the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry and the possibility of the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York trying to implement a grand jury or something along those lines. Can you share your thoughts on that situation and just some background that you have on that?
Well, what the Lawyers Committee has done is to confront the U.S. Attorney, the Southern District of New York, which is really the most controlled U.S. Attorney in the country, with extraordinary evidence that the official account of 9/11 is a fabrication, and that crimes were committed that have not been investigated. And there is a statute in U.S. law that gives to Americans the ability to present crimes to U.S. attorneys that requires them to convene a grand jury to investigate. So the Lawyers Committee has provided evidence of these crimes, and the U.S. Attorney's Office has said that they will comply with the law. They didn't say they would convene a grand jury, but they did say they would comply with the law, which requires them to do that. But I don't really see how they can. I don't think that a U.S. attorney would be permitted to really investigate it. Now, they may have they may have a fake investigation, or they may call the grand jury and present them with the case in an unconvincing way and get it all dismissed as some kind of anti-American conspiracy theory. Otherwise, it implies, the downfall of very powerful autonomous groups that operate under the cloak of secrecy in the United States government. And I think they're far more powerful than a U.S. attorney. So I don't see how anything can really come of it.
Well, you're giving us a nice and bright and cheery outlook for 2019 as it relates to 9/11 truth, and it's not giving us much to hope for. But I agree with you. I'm joking, of course, but I definitely agree with you. And I think what you're referencing there is, of course, the term that has become very popular in the last couple years, which is the term deep state. Which, if I'm being honest, it drives me a little bit crazy because, as I'm sure you're aware, as somebody who's been involved in government, for those who are listening and are unaware, Mr. Roberts is, of course, the former United States Assistant Secretary of the Treasury under President Ronald Reagan. And you have obviously quite a bit of experience where you're not just speaking from ignorance, but speaking from your own experience directly involved with these institutions. And now people are thinking in terms of deep state. They're thinking in terms of embedded government that the shadow government. And that's what I was saying. We used to call this the shadow government, or I guess people would say the New World Order, things like that. Now deep state has become very popular. You're pointing, though, to the larger picture, though, is that when it comes to things like 9/11, or even going back to JFK, which you mentioned in your blog here, that people, not only are the masses probably not ready to accept these truths or to even consider them, but that there's so much entrenched power that it's almost, dare I say, impossible to wedge the truth from their hold, their grip.
Well, actually, Derrick, I think that the majority polls now show a majority of people don't believe the official 9/11 story. And
I would agree with that. The masses are more aware.
Polls show that hardly anyone believes that Oswald killed Kennedy. But the official explanation doesn't change just because the public's view changes. For example, the official explanation of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty in 1967 still stands, despite all the testimony of all the crew and the Mora Commission convened by Admiral Mora, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Despite all the evidence, which is overwhelming, the official explanation that it was all just some kind of Israeli mistake still stands. So just because people don't believe official explanations doesn't mean they don't remain the official explanation. So I don't really think, and looking at the outcome of the reopening of the Kennedy assassination by the Congress, I think some 13 years after the event, public dissatisfaction with the Warren Commission report was so overwhelming that the Congress had to investigate. They created a committee to investigate, and they modified some of the conclusions. They said, well, clearly there was a conspiracy, and Oswald wasn't the only one, but we don't say or know who the conspirators were, for example. So, and then they revealed what they really did to get the whole thing on the back burner. They revealed the Northwoods Project, which was a plan by the Joint Chiefs of Staff to shoot down American citizens in the streets of Washington, D.C., Miami, to shoot down American airliners, to strafe refugee boats from Cuba and blame Castro so that the U.S. military could invade Cuba and have regime change. This was a top secret document. It was presented to President Kennedy by Lemitzer, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and of course Kennedy rejected it. But the release of that, it was such a sensation at the time, though it's dropped out of view, that it kind of put the Kennedy assassination on the back burner. So something comparable may come out of the 9/11 Lawyers Committee.
So, I mean, what you're saying there is that maybe the public learns the truth, kind of like we've learned with the MLK assassination and obviously the JFK assassination. But at the end of the day, if the people in power, the entrenched power, the official story doesn't change, then it really might not have an effect other than public awareness, and maybe even sometimes the opposite effect that we want. Instead of getting people to get to the streets and be upset or call for change, they just kind of passively accept, yeah, we were lied to, JFK was a lie, 9/11 was a lie, but what are you going to do about it?
Well, you see, the point is they really can't do anything about it. Think about the Kennedy assassination. I personally don't think anyone on the Warren Commission believed what they told the people. They knew that Kennedy had been murdered by the CIA, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secret Service itself. The evidence was overwhelming. But they couldn't possibly tell the American people during the Cold War, when this competition with the Soviet Union, the Soviet threat, blah, 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 that their president had been killed by their own government, because the confidence in the government would have collapsed. Were they going to actually drag in the top generals and CIA officers and Secret Service people and put them on trial? No, of course not. Nothing like that could happen. And it's the same today. If we've got 20 years of a fake war on terror. It's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax. We have this Russiagate. We have all this recreation of the Russian threat. It keeps the military security complex in funds. It's $1,000 billion a year is the military security budget. And all kinds of power go with that, all kinds of unaccountability. Now, there's no way that can be shaken. And so if this grand jury happens and they come up and say, yes, these crimes did happen, we've got to find out who it is and hold them accountable and all of that, it's not conceivable. You're talking about people in the George W. Bush administration, possibly Israeli involvement, CIA involvement. This type of thing is just not going to happen. It would just completely crack any confidence at home or abroad in the American government. And it would undermine all of the propaganda of 20 years, which, the war on terror, this is now imbued into the population. And the Muslim threat, the Russian threat, they're not going to let go of that. It's too much. And so I don't think it can happen. I think that the fact that the U.S. attorney has said that he will comply with the law, what this does, this itself is a major achievement. It gets rid of the notion that the skeptics are conspiracy theorists, because a U.S. attorney would never call a grand jury on the basis of a conspiracy theory. So the U.S. attorney, by saying he will comply with the law, has validated that there's real evidence. So I think it makes it very difficult now to dismiss the scientists, the architects, the engineers, the first responders, the pilots, who all say this is BS, this is hogwash, this 9/11 story is hogwash. It makes it hard now to call all these expert and experienced people conspiracy theorists.
For sure, Dr. Roberts. And I think it's interesting because in the end, you gave us a point of something positive, opening the door maybe to some more people, given these concerns some credibility. As you said, a U.S. attorney wouldn't just open up a case or go to a grand jury on a conspiracy theory. So I guess what we're saying is, in the long run, we might get one more small battle, small victory for opening up the minds of the people to realize what's going on. Not so much changing the government. I thought it was interesting when you spoke. You spoke about this is the most controlled attorney in the country, and you spoke about they won't be permitted. And people, we believe obviously that these things are the case, that they won't be permitted, that things don't happen unless they're approved, but it's also really scary to think, the way we're taught in school, the way we want to believe with the Constitution, Bill of Rights and all of that it's all just permitted and controlled in that manner. And so given that things such as this and the history with the Kennedy assassination that you were bringing up, and how, the official story never changes. And so we get these official stories that, are BS, and we get another generation of people that grow up underneath the official story, and all these official stories, like, for instance, about how bad guns are. It almost seems like there are some things that we should never do in this climate. And one of the things I'm starting to believe more and more so is that we should never give up our guns. You say that to anyone nowadays, and it seems like a lot of people think you're a gun nut, whether you own a gun or not. Just, I think there's a problem with recognition of rights, what they even are anymore. But my point that I'm trying to get to, and maybe a question that I'm trying to get to, is in the face of what we're talking about, permitted, controlled U.S. attorneys, courts, people that can pull off something of the caliber of these other events that we spoke of, I feel like, how do I put it? I feel like we should never give up our guns, but at the same time, what would it matter if we're never able to, demand justice or do anything? I mean, I guess in the long run, if we never give up our guns, there's only so far they can push us.
Well, the guns have many uses, not just against the tyranny of government, but just home protection from criminals. And, we've seen so many breakdowns in society. It's in many ways a fruit of multiculturalism. There's no longer a homogeneous population. There are many so-called minorities who have special rights. They can be offended. You can't speak about them, and so on. So if you had a general breakdown in social cohesion, guns are still a way for self-protection or family protection. Using them against the state, which is, prepared to use any kind of weapons.
And they definitely have better ones.
They've got, drones, and, they can hit you with missiles from you don't know where. And on the other hand, the number of armed Americans is very large, and many, many tens of millions. And so just the size of that armed group, in the end, could serve as a constraint on tyrannical government that's putting people into camps or cutting off resources to them, water, power, food, whatever. So I think the guns still have the ability to limit what the government can do, at least at this current time they do.
Do you think that's perhaps, we see an ongoing erosion of basically every right, but do you think that's one of the reasons that you see these red flag laws coming up, or do you think that they could, be serving safety of the population?
I don't know.
Okay.
These are not things that are predictable.
For sure.
The world, like American propaganda has basically put the whole world in the matrix. And most people, not just here, but all over the world, are influenced by the success of American propaganda. And they live in this propaganda, which is totally false, as if it's real. So the whole world is in a matrix. And the people who get out are the ones who are intelligent enough to notice it and can still get enough independent information independent of the propaganda, to figure out and get a real understanding of the world. It's like the film, The Matrix. You take the blue pill or the red pill. And so these people tend to be defensive of the truth and to push it. And we do see gains in this. As I said, the Kennedy assassination report, the Warren Commission report, is no longer believed. Majority of the people don't believe the 9/11 Commission or the official story. And so you do have a situation where people are gradually emerging. But it's usually way, way behind the time. You see, the Kennedy assassination was more than 50 years ago. And so most of the people who were alive and there at the time, and know they're dead.
But then there's things like with 9/11, the results, like that receiving the Patriot Act on, thrust on the people and such. Yeah. For real. You said there's some gains, and that's good to hear. Going into a new year, I'd like to believe that there's hopes and that we can progress and come to know. I think you brought up some good points there with information and coming to know what's really going on. But at the same time, there's these other questions about the propaganda machine and of how. Where were you going here with this one, Derrick?
Well, I wanted to just mention just a brief point on what you just said, Mr. Roberts, a moment ago about the matrix that we're in. I mean, definitely this is something we believe. This is why we do, the content we do, whether it's radio programs, YouTube videos, passing out flyers, doing the different things we do to try to crack through and pull some more minds out of the matrix, if you will. And also, I don't know if I'm sure you did catch wind of this, but throughout 2018 and now going into 2019, we've seen a lot of censorship of that independent media. You said people need to seek out to find, kind of get to the truth of things. And, we're also seeing pushback in that area from what people would, they try to label these companies, say Facebook, Google, as private companies, but at best they're quasi-private companies that take and have taken funding from U.S. governments and have connection to intelligence agencies. And their efforts to censor and to remove much of the independent alternative media from the platforms, or just label us Russian fake news and then demonetize us, lower us in rankings and searches and all these kinds of things, what people call shadow banning. So it's we're definitely it's become more obvious, I'd say, that we are in the midst of an information war. Whenever we saw some of the biggest pages on Facebook that have 4 million, 5 million followers and have been reaching hundreds of millions and millions and millions of people over the years, we saw them taken down. It really, I think, for some of us was a realization that, okay, well, whatever label we want to give these people, deep state, Facebook, intelligence apparatus, whatever, they're pushing back. And the information war seemed a little bit more real. So I think that you're right that we do have to be able to pull people from the matrix, because whether it's 9/11, whether it's talking about red flag laws and guns, or just government becoming more intrusive, that they're showing their hand, and it maybe we'd like to believe that things are getting better here and there in different superficial ways, but it seems like the bigger picture is progressing in a way that is not towards freedom.
Well, of course, they can avoid First Amendment problems by relying on private companies to do the censorship, which is what they're doing. But you see, it's hard to know the outcome of this because it becomes more apparent that they are controlling. And despite all of this, I don't know if you saw...
You've been listening to Freethinker Radio with an interview between me and Micah and former Assistant Treasury Secretary Paul Craig Roberts. You can find him at paulcraigroberts.org. And you can find that full interview at youtube.com/consciousresistance or hear more of it this Friday on the FM dial from 3 to 4.
And you can put your comments on there. We got a lot of comments.
Leave some comments. There's some nice comments, some mean comments. It's YouTube. It's what you come to expect. We're going to go hear some more music and then come back and finish the last 15 minutes with you guys today here on 90.1 KPFT. Here's some more So Soon the Truth. Be right back. Oh, it's a good one. So Soon Truth. Here from Houston, Cypress, Texas, not too far out. Check them out at So Soon the Truth.
I think they're far out.
Bandcamp, all that good places.
They're far
and
out.
Before that, we were playing our interview with Paul Craig Roberts. If you want to check that out, again, as I said, you can hear more of it on Friday on Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT FM. And then, if you want to hear the full thing, check it out at the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel. Until then, before then, we got 12 minutes left on the show, and we would love another phone call at 713-526-8737. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's show.
Love a pizza.
The news that we talked about.
Pizza.
Yeah, it's too late for you to send us pizzas, but next time we're open to it.
Mind.
And
Friday.
Tell us what's on your mind.
Hey, I saw this thing inside Facebook's cult-like workplace where dissent is discouraged. Employees pretend to be happy all the time. That seems kind of like the way I expect it to be there, with big thumbs up on their foreheads and stuff. I don't know, man. It sounds like people are starting to talk out about Facebook culture there in the company. Turns out the head of policy, Joel Kaplan, caused an internal uproar for appearing at the congressional hearing for Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Female employee was among those who got up to speak, addressing her comments directly to COO Sheryl Sandberg. I was reticent to speak, Sheryl, because the pressure for us to act as though everything is fine and that we love working here is so great that it hurts, she said, according to multiple former Facebook employees who witnessed the event. There shouldn't be this pressure to pretend to love something when I don't feel this way, said the employee, setting off a wave of applause from her colleagues at the emotional town hall in Menlo Park. See, this is interesting because what this is like this town hall, right? And she goes there to, this corporate person, right? Because you got corporations and government all buddy, right? So she goes there for this hearing for Brett Kavanaugh because, they got to be semi-politico or whatever. And boom, this event is then taken to talk about this corporate culture problem. So I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of reshaping the focus of this town hall meeting, So the episode speaks at an atmosphere at Facebook in which employees feel pressure to place the company above all else in their lives, fall in line with the manager's orders, and force cordiality with their colleagues so they can advance. Several former employees likened the culture to a cult. Not surprising. This culture has contributed to the company's well-publicized wave of scandals over the last 2 years, such as government spreading misinformation to try to influence elections and the misuse of private user data, according to many people who worked there during this period. See, and they're trying to get everybody to just be happy. They say Facebook might have caught some of these problems sooner if employees were encouraged to deliver honest feedback. Amid these scandals, Facebook's price per share fell nearly 30% in 2018 and nearly 40% since its peak in July, resulting in a loss of more than $252 billion in market capitalization. Yeah, think about that, just from mismanagement.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, we think like they're serving themselves, right, doing all these wicked deals and stuff, but really they're kind of hurting themselves. Meanwhile, Facebook's reputation as being one of the best places in Silicon Valley to work is showing some cracks. According to Glassdoor, which lets employees anonymously review their workplaces, Facebook fell from being the best place to work in the United States to number 7 in the last year. But employees don't complain in the workplace. There's a real culture of, even if you are, and it says F ing miserable, you need to act like you love this place, said one of the ex-employees who left in October. It's not okay to act like this is not the best place to work. This account is based on conversations with more than a dozen former Facebook employees, their stack ranking employee performance evaluation systems, and Facebook declined to comment on former employees' characterization of the workplace as cult-like. And it goes on further. It talks about top-down approach where major decisions are made by the company's leadership. Employees are discouraged from dissenting voice any types. And they're told to be their authentic selves all the time. So much it sounds like a mantra. They say, your authentic self, your authentic self. I never felt it was an environment that truly encouraged, quote, authentic self and encouraged real dissent because at the times I personally did it, I got always got calls, said a former manager who left the company in 2018. Sentiment was echoed by another employee who left in 2017. What comes with scale and large operations is you can't afford to have too much individual voice, said this person. If you have an army, the larger the army is, the less individuals have voice. They have to follow the leader. In this employee's 2 years at Facebook, his team grew from a few people to more than 50. He said it was very much implied to him that and his teammates that they were to trust their leaders, follow orders, and avoid having hard conversations. Story goes on further, but, we only got so long.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, definitely check that one out. I'm sure Michael will get that on the Free Thinker Radio Facebook page. I did that one. I thought you were going to say the HoustonFreeThinkers.com. Well, I've given up already. I've given up. I just had to give up. This one is dealing with surveillance and another big company, not Facebook though, but similar tech company, Amazon, one of the other most powerful companies in the world. And I believe we mentioned this that a couple weeks ago, Amazon had put out a patent, and it was reported that Amazon was going to be either acquiring or partnering with the company called Ring. Some of you may be familiar with this. Ring places miniature cameras that can be placed anywhere inside your property or your house, around your house, for surveillance. But specifically, they sell a peephole camera, so that you can see who's in the peephole, and so Amazon is partnering with them to connect with Ring's cameras and install not only Alexa, but their what's called recognition, it's spelled with a K, their facial recognition software, biometric software. So imagine this, you're walking through the neighborhood and people have facial recognition cameras on their freaking peepholes and can just scan the faces of anybody who happens to be passing by or of their, anybody who may be visiting. And the ACLU, who we interviewed a few weeks ago, says Amazon is dreaming of a dangerous future with its technology at the center of a massive decentralized surveillance network, running real-time facial recognition on members of the public using cameras installed in people's doorbells. He continues, while the details are sketchy, the application describes a system that the police can use to match the faces of people walking by a doorbell camera with a photo database of persons they deem, quote, suspicious. Likewise, homeowners can also add photos of suspicious people into the system, and then the doorbell's facial recognition program will scan anyone passing their home. In either case, if a match occurs, the person's face can automatically be sent to law enforcement, and the police could arrive in minutes. According to a new report by The Intercept, there have been more than just algorithms watching through the lenses of Amazon's Ring surveillance cameras. Several sources told The Intercept that Ukrainian data operators under Ring Labs and U.S. engineers were given access to customer videos on the Amazon cloud, allowing anyone with access to view anyone with Ring's cameras' personal videos due to the lack of any sort of encryption. So basically, Amazon has their cloud service, and if they partner with Ring, then they're going to say, well, all your files, all your videos that you shoot with your Ring facial recognition camera will be stored in the cloud, where there is a lack of security. So there's another development in our dystopian future we move further and further into. And on that note, sort of maybe look out for things that the U.S. government might try in the future. We'll file this and that. It's an article titled, Chinese Authorities Go After Citizens for Using VPNs, which are virtual private networks, offer you a layer of protection, skirting, and people who are skirting online censorship. 2 Chinese users are currently facing punishment for doing what an estimated 1 to 3% of people living in mainland China do every day, accessing the global internet, and not just, behind the Chinese Great Firewall, the Great Chinese Firewall, as they call it. Among other methods, many internet users in China depend on VPNs, or virtual private networks, to skirt or circumvent China's Great Firewall, the robust filtering system that blocks sensitive information and oversees websites from China's domestic network. So basically a VPN, when you use a VPN, instead of it saying you're in Houston, Texas, accessing the internet, it says, oh, you are in Azerbaijan, so-and-so. And so say you're in China where you can't access the normal internet. Well, this VPN can help you appear to be somewhere else, so then you can get through some of the layers of what they call the Chinese firewall. And apparently these 2 internet users who've been doing that are now being fined and potentially could face jail time or further punishments. One of them is a 30-year-old who used Lantern Pro, a mobile app and circumvention tool that connects users to a decentralized network of nodes that allows them to overcome censorship. And the Chinese are cracking down on that. So get your security software, your encryption software while you can, because if you live in China, or if you stay in the United States or anywhere else that is also adopting these surveillance state tactics, you probably won't be able to use them for that long without facing some kind of repercussions. That's all I got today. We're almost out of time.
We are almost out of time.
So much to cover, so little time.
Turns out VPNs are illegal in Iran as well. I just noticed that. I was looking them up to see where and things like that. John Bolton, want to talk about him for 2 minutes. National Security Council sought military options to strike Iran. Wow.
Surprise.
Yeah, this is coming off the Washington Examiner just January 13th. National Security Council sought options for a military strike against Iran last year. You're hearing about it now. Following a mortar attack near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad by a Shiite militia group aligned with Tehran. And this is according to a report that was just published yesterday morning. 3 mortars landed in an abandoned lot in Iraqi capital's Green Zone in September. They resulted in no casualties, but it was enough to prompt National Security Advisor John Bolton to request from the Pentagon a plan to take action against Iran, as well as Syria and Iraq. Wow, look how fast that grew. The request related to Iran alarmed officials in both the State Department and the Pentagon. That makes me feel kind of good, right? You know, if people that had these jobs there in the State Department and the Pentagon were alarmed, you know, about a situation like that, it definitely rattled people. A former senior U.S. administrator official told the outlet, people were shocked. It was mind-boggling how cavalier they were about hitting Iran.